Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie, broadcasting throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m, broadcasting on our YouTube platform, our Facebook, our Twitter and our TikTok. And for people on TikTok, the best viewing experience will be at our youtube.com/UK A Force for Good channel. And this is our unionist chat, which we have every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. And if you're watching on Twitter, please do retweet this. And the best thing to do is to give us a quote tweet. When you go to retweet, click where it says quote tweet and just put in your own comment. And that will enable us to then retweet you to over 27,000 people. So it's a win-win, a 360 win, as they say. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about the ferry fiasco. Some of you may have watched the programme that was on BBC last night. It's still on iPlayer, and you'll find the link to it in our comment. Sorry about that. A little bit of technological differences, as they say. Hope that's not going to plague us for too long. However, many of you will have seen the programme. Please do send us in your comments what you thought about it as well. And basically just to give you a very brief insight into what it was. I'll do that in a minute. I just want to say hello to everybody who's coming in there. Hi to Pau, who says, "Hi Scotland, glory to Britain." That's a good comment. Frankie says, "Good evening, Alistair. Scotland is British." And Harry Brown says, "Good evening all, AFFG and unionist. Hope you're all having a great evening." Thank you, Harry, and I hope you are too, as does Alan say, "Good evening all." And hello to Steve and to Paul, also good evening from Kent, the Garden of England. And Catherine says, "Good evening everyone." And Kenny from East Kilbride says, "Hello, as always, good to see you in the house, Kenny." And also Stuart, a regular, and Emma, a regular. Good stuff. And also to Kimberly. Hiya Kimberly, good to see you in the unionist house this evening. And also Derek and Adam and George says, "Good evening from the great British city of Cardiff." George, I've got news for you in Cardiff. We are looking for somebody this Saturday to help us in Cardiff because the AUOB Welsh contingent are having a march in Cardiff. They're going through the centre of town. They're beginning at Windsor Lane, and they're kind of just doing a circuit, and we need somebody to film them on their mobile phone, okay, and somehow either to upload it directly to their Facebook page or to send us the film via Dropbox so that we can count them, because they're following the same lying strategy as the ones up here do, which is exaggerating their numbers. So we need to get a good count of them now. So if you know anybody in the area that would do that, please direct messages and we can talk more about that. But that's this Saturday at lunchtime. David, good evening all. Long live the unions. The union. And the unions for that matter. Adam Bray says, "Do we have opinions on the slump of the pound?" Well, what's your thoughts on that, Adam? Because so many people are given us their... so many politicians have got an axe to grind, and so we don't really know whom to believe. Hi, Jamie. Keeping up the good work. Thank you, sir. Now, yeah, the ferry debacle. By the way, we've got a competition coming up at the bottom of the hour, and that is the prize. It's a fridge magnet of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And you know, because we're feeling generous, we're going to also throw in this Union Jack trolley token as well. Good stuff. So the question for that will be coming up at the bottom of the hour, and the answer will simply be the first person who can send us the answer. The question will be coming up at the bottom of the hour, and the winner will be the first person who can send us the answer via contact@aforceforgood.uk. Look at that, all you folk on TikTok. Don't you wish that was yours? And you can win it as well, and you can have a fridge magnet of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland on your fridge. Fantastic. Stephen says, keep a strict eye on the Welsh separatists and knock down their lies every time. Well, we'll do our best, but we need people in Wales to be able to film them. And hopefully we can build up a wee group of folk down there who will be keeping an eye on these Welsh separatist marches. Kenny saw the programme last night, which was called Disclosure. What was it called? Disclosure, the Great Ferry Scandal. The Great Ferries Scandal. And basically, it was remarkable to see, actually, because it started at the very beginning, and it took you through exactly what had happened. And basically, this yard, Ferguson's, had the procurement was opened up basically internationally, as far as we could tell. But what each yard had to confirm before they could get through to the next stage was that they would be able to give a refund guarantee, which meant that, you know, if things got wrong, everybody would be recompensed. And Ferguson's was unable to give a refund guarantee. But despite that, it got through to the next round. And then once it got through to the next round, which it should never have done in the first place, it was given basically inside information as to how to win the procurement contract. Even to the point of it being clear that they could submit another design for another ship, which Ferguson's themselves had not wanted to do because they didn't think the design was viable. So they ended up getting this contract for this ship, which they didn't think the design was viable, and basically designing it and building it at the same time. And this was just a complete catastrophe. And they interviewed a couple of guys who were just on the workforce. I don't quite know what their roles were, but a couple of experienced workers, both of whom were saying that while when they heard that Ferguson's had bid for 2 ferries of that size, they knew that the yard wasn't capable of delivering that. Okay? The management didn't seem to appear to have bothered to speak to the actual workers on the ground to ask them, do you think we can do this? And I've seen that before. I've been in a company where it totally overextended itself, and I knew, even though I was just like a humble bloke in the office, I knew that that company was not going to be able to survive its new acquisition. And it didn't. And it went out of business. And so management seemed to be plagued by not properly talking to the blokes on the ground who have actually got to do the work and saying, do you think we can pull this off? So again, a management failure there completely, as well as the the Scottish National Party having its fingers in this particular pie in a very bad way. So the whole thing was just astonishing. It did end, though, on a fairly positive note, giving the impression that the Yard at the moment was actually getting back on its feet and was being able to, and seemed to be able to, deliver these ferries eventually. But time will tell, because I heard there was something happened today as well that held them up for another 2 or 3 months. But the whole thing was just absolutely ridiculous. And it really should be, well, it is a national scandal, but it's amazing the extent to which the Scottish National Party have been able to ride this out. But who knows? Maybe it will be a nail in their coffin in the long term. We'll have to see. But an absolute scandal all round. Alan says, notice that the SNP TV news, they never cover the ferry scandal. Well, that's true. They do that obviously for a reason. Kimberly says, Ferguson's in Port Glasgow. The Scottish governments gave away contracts to Eastern Europe. Adam says, more disclosure, more like how Nicola Sturgeon destroyed Scotland. And Kenny says, they didn't say that Jim McCall was made a financial advisor to the SNP and he campaigned for them in 2014. Then they tried to blame him for the ferries. Yes, he was interviewed at some length, and one could understand his predicament. He seemed to give the impression that he thought all the other companies were getting the sort of inside information that Ferguson's were being delivered by the various arms of the Scottish administration and its quangos. He seemed to believe that was the case, and there was no other reason, and there was no reason for him to doubt that, really. Kimberly says, I'm in Greenock and used to live in Port Glasgow, which is just next door. We hear all the news on the Greenock Telegraph, which is a disaster in itself. And Steve says, they also sneaked in Eastern European workers during the lockdown. Crikey. That's interesting. Well, folks, this weekend there's going to be a separatist shuffle down the Royal Mile, and that's going to be followed by a losers convention outside Holyrood. However, we're not going to be at that. It's not worth our time, energy and resources to be there, but we'll certainly obviously be filming them and counting them, and we're also wanting, as I say, to count the march which is in Cardiff. So if any of you have a mobile phone and you don't mind taking an hour out your day, just contact us and we'll tell you everything that you need to know about where the march is and what's happening with it, and how to best capture some good footage of the entire march on your mobile phone and get it to us so that we can count it and document it as we do on a page on our website. Good evening, Nelson and all fellow unionists everywhere. Eric says, their ferry fiasco is like their war on drugs, a total shambles. Whilst celebrating we saved one person last year with our policies. SNP are just clowns. And Kenny says, there is no comparison with the BAE yards who successfully churn out the UK frigates in Scotland. That's for sure. Stuart wonders if it's going to be raining on Saturday. We are going to be out, though, with Activism on Saturday. A Force for Good is going to be doing some physical activism outside on Saturday. So if you'd like to join us here, please do tell us and we'll keep you in the loop, because we don't. For a lot of our activism, we don't just put it out as a message to everybody. We're really only going to invite people that we know and that we know of and that we know personally. So if you'd like to be involved with a Force for Good, with some activism, this Saturday is not going to be in Edinburgh. We're ignoring the Separatist Shuffle and the Losers Convention in Edinburgh. We're avoiding that. But if you would like to be out with us for some other activism, please do contact us. And if you do contact us, if you've never contacted us before and you do it through Facebook, we're really only going to get back to you if you've got a Facebook profile that we can see as a real person. If you've got a Facebook profile where your face is hidden, we're not going to really get back to you. That's just for obvious reasons. But if you'd like to be with us, do contact us via Facebook, and we'll see what we can do together. Well, Paul says, if the great British city of Glasgow hosts the Eurovision next year, then Union Jacks need to be seen everywhere. Absolutely, don't they just? And I believe it's now down to whether it's going to be Glasgow or Liverpool, two great British cities, both of which extremely worthy, no doubt, of hosting the Eurovision. And so we'll just see. From our perspective, of course, it would be great if it was in Glasgow, because we'd be able to make a wee scene there, no doubt about it. Kimberly's talking here. They did bring in Eastern European workers during lockdown, completely ignoring local qualified tradesmen, local welders, etc. There was some backlash from qualified locals. That's interesting. Well, we've had a busy week in the office, actually. We have actually written a letter to the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, one Liz Truss, and we wrote this an open letter to the Prime Minister, 3 easy win policies to build up the Union. And we sent this to her at the beginning of this week, and we also put this letter out on our website, and you'll find the link to it in the comments. And let me just tell you very briefly what we said here, because it's quite important. The first thing that we pointed out to her was, don't talk about once in a generation or all that kind of nonsense, because a generation will come and go, and then what are you going to say? The point is, we simply want to strengthen the United Kingdom and defeat the people who want to break it up. Defeat them politically. So that's what you concentrate on doing. Policies to strengthen the UK and policies to put the separatists on the back foot. And if you can do that, then things will just generally fall into place over time. Just so concentrate on the positive. Concentrate on keeping the United Kingdom together and building policies which will keep the United Kingdom together. That's the first thing. And the second thing that we pointed out to her is, do not be threatened by the nonsense that somehow the British Parliament doesn't have a mandate to hold the United Kingdom together. Of course it has a mandate, a very strong mandate. It has a constitutional mandate to do so, because everyone in Scotland who voted to send MPs to the House of Commons was thereby giving their authority to that MP and to that House of Commons to govern the United Kingdom on their behalf. And that was whether you voted even for SNP or any other group. If you were doing that, and if those MPs were saying that they were going to take up their seats, then you gave the British Parliament your authority for it to govern all of the United Kingdom. So that's its constitutional mandate. It has a democratic mandate, as we point out here at the 2019 general election, and we've even got the graphic there, which we can put up. The 2019 general election, you can see that there were more people voted for parties that wanted to keep the UK together than voted for parties that didn't want to keep the UK together. And so there it is there, 2019 general election, total vote of parties in Scotland against a second ref, 54% of the vote, basically. Total vote of parties in Scotland for a second referendum, 46% of the total votes. So that's the democratic mandate right there. And it also has a popular mandate as well, because regularly at every single British general election, okay, there are more people voting at Westminster elections than ever vote at the Holyrood election in Scotland by substantial majorities. For example, in 2019, 68% of the Scottish electorate voted at the Westminster general election, whereas in 2021, 63.5% in Scotland voted for Holyrood. So Liz Truss and the British Parliament have got a mandate to hold the United Kingdom together. And our three policies which we suggested that she needs to get working on was, first, one, ditch the Northern Ireland Protocol, because the aim has to be the convergence of Scotland, England, Northern Ireland and Wales, not the divergence of Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom, because that's just sending it down the route of what the Republicans want. The second easy win is to stop the British civil service promoting the Indy agenda in Scotland. And that's another easy thing that she could do, because the head of the civil service is the cabinet secretary who sits around her table. He's in charge of the civil servants in Scotland, and he could tell them to stop working for the Scottish National Party when they are being required to promote separatism and to research and to produce publications for a second independence referendum. It's just a complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. There's no way that we as unionists can compete against the might of the British state working against us. And the third thing that we pointed out, and we pointed this out last week as well, is if the government is going to give us money, then you have to brand those payments correctly. Otherwise, people in Scotland don't know where the money's coming from. It's all very confused now because we've got separate Scottish tax rates and we've got Barnett formulas and all that sort of thing. And many of us don't actually understand properly where all the money's coming from. So if you are going to, as for example the British government have just done, which is give people a £650 cost of living benefit payment, then when you send those letters to people in Scotland, you've got to tell them that it's coming from the British government. Otherwise they'll think it's coming from Nicola Sturgeon. Another wasted opportunity. So those were three easy win policies which we said, look, get sorted on those. Get sorted on those, and that's going to do a lot tactically to put the spanner in the works of those who want to destroy the United Kingdom. Ryan says devolution should be revisited and re-examined as it has been a significant failure since its inception. Nelson says it's all common sense, Alistair. Isn't it just common sense? Seems so often, though, that politicians aren't renowned for having common sense. So it's coming up to the bottom of the hour when we're going to be having our On This Day in British History. After I've spoken about On This Day in British History, I'll ask a question about what I've just said, and the winner will get this amazing little fridge magnet of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and we're also going to chuck in a trolley token, a Union Jack trolley token. Do not say that we're not generous to you. Goodness me. So on this day in British history matters, because we don't know where we're going if we don't know where we are, and we don't know where we are if we don't know where we have been. Well, it was on this day in British history, the 28th of September, and this is actually a very timely point that I'm about to make, because there's been a little bit of controversy about the Labour Party singing the national anthem on Sunday at the start of its party conference. Shouldn't be a controversy, but for some reason the media like to make a wee thing of it. Well, it was on this day, 28th of September in 1745, that the British, what became the British National Anthem, was first sung. And back then, in 1745, it was not regarded as a national anthem. It was simply just a song. And indeed, as I'll explain later this evening in the programme, it didn't become the national anthem until the 1800s, after the union even with Ireland in 1801. But back then in 1745, it was in Drury Lane Theatre, which is in London. And it was the 28th of September. Now, a week previously, there had been a battle between the Jacobites and the British forces, which the Jacobites had won, actually, under Bonnie Prince Charlie. It was called the Battle of Preston Pans. That was on the 21st of September. And Charlie was making his way down the country to try to take the British throne in London, and some of the people, quite understandably, in London were beginning to get a little bit anxious about this. And the song that we understand as God Save the Queen had already been around. And this book, which I have got, God Save the Queen, The History and Romance of the World's First National Anthem, is an amazing piece of work. And the author of this, Percy A. Scholes, he researched, like, where did these words come from and who wrote them and so on. And the earliest reference he could find was in 1744, around about a year before it was actually sung. And the words were put to music by Thomas Arne, who also put the words of Rule Britannia to music as well. And they played it at the Drury Lane Theatre, and it was an immediate success, understandably, because it was so powerful. And that's all I'm going to say about that just now, because I'm going to come back to this when we're busting our Indy Myths this evening. But this was the day, the 28th of September 1745, that the British National Anthem was first sung in Drury Lane Theatre in London. What else happened on this day? On this day, 28th of September 1928, penicillin was discovered by, of course, Alexander Fleming. And we've got a picture of Alexander Fleming here, looking, of course, very serious, looking the quintessential dour Scotsman that he may well have been. And he said, quote, "When I awoke up just after dawn, I certainly didn't plan to revolutionize all medicine by discovering the world's first antibiotic. But I suppose that was exactly what I did." Now, this fellow Fleming, he was born in Darvel, near Darvel, which is a wee village in Ayrshire, and he served in the London Scottish. And then when war broke out, he served in the Royal Army Medical Corps. And in 1918 he returned to St Mary's Hospital in Paddington, where he made his discovery on this day in 1928. And it was his experience in battle which motivated him to search for antibacterial agents after having witnessed the death of many soldiers from sepsis resulting from their infected wounds. He died in 1955 and he's buried in St Paul's Cathedral, a very grand place for him to be buried. And we've got another photograph of him here where he's smiling, and that's probably the closest you're ever going to get to seeing Alexander Fleming smiling. There's a hint there of a smile, and he has got a very modest memorial in Darvel, which we'll just show you here. A very kind of slightly unusual bust, because as you can see there, he doesn't have his shirt on. Well, I doubt that Alexander Fleming ever took his shirt off in his entire life. But there you go, he is there with his naked chest, which doesn't sort of seem likely, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's in the village of Darvel in Ayrshire. That's good old Alexander Fleming there for you. Okay. So Eric says, Twitter is calling the Labour conference the F word because of the Union flag in the background. That's absurd. Absolutely absurd. That says more about the people who are saying those things than it does about anybody else. We put out a wee picture yesterday on Twitter, actually, of Keir Hardie, who was the founder of the Labour Party, sitting in his home in London with a Union Jack hanging on his wall. Kimberly says, just wanted to mention that my daughters have just yesterday received their Queen's Jubilee books. I really believe that not getting the book was a deliberate act. We had to ask why our children didn't get their books when every child was supposed to get this book to mark a historical moment to remember in years to come. Well, I'm glad that you got it. It would have been nice if you had got it when the Queen was still with us. And Alan says, the amount of folk who can't understand that God Save the Queen is the national anthem for Scotland is astounding. It totally is, and we're going to talk about that in Busting Indy Myths in a moment. Frankie says, British history is the best history in the world. Harry says, Fleming, I might learn about him in university this year. He created a lifesaver. I hope you do. Hope you do, Harry. If you don't learn about Fleming, crikey. Alan says that my son didn't get his book about the Queen. That's a pity. That's a pity. There's still no doubt if the school was pressured to do it, then they would get a batch in. So let's talk about busting Indy myths. No, before I talk about busting Indy myths, let's ask a question. Okay, let's ask a question. And if you have the answer, please send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk, and you could be walking off with a Union Jack fridge magnet showing the UK, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, plus a Union Jack trolley token. Okay, and if you haven't done this before, you're in with a good chance of winning. Now, the question is, on this day, and it's a pretty easy question, right? So it's just fingers on the buzzers. On this day, 28th of September in 1928, who discovered penicillin? Send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk and we'll give you the winner at the top of the hour. Eric says, Alan, chase up the matter of the books. He goes, I would. Kimberly says, speak to the school. Every child knows the UK was entitled. Every child in the UK was entitled to receive their book. There was no issues getting the book to all the schools in the rest of the UK. We've actually got a copy of the book here in the office as well. Maybe I'll review that in a future program. That's a good idea. Okay. We can get rid of that address. Now, on this day in British history. No. Busting Indy Myths, Part 18. Busting Indy Myths. Because we are busting Indy Myths on the daily, weekly, monthly and yearly until the Scot Nats see clearly that we're down with the capital A to the double FG. And this is Busting Indy Myths Part 18. Okay, when we've got 20 under our belt, we're going to publish them in the next issue of Union Heart. Our magazine Union Heart. The next issue will be a Busting Indy Myths issue, which we'll be distributing on our street stalls. This, by the way, there's only a few copies of these left. And you can get these at our shop. Anyway, in this Busting Indy Myths, we're going to address the oft-heard myth, the oft-heard urban myth, that the British National Anthem has an anti-Scottish verse in it. Absolutely absurd, absolutely crazy, absolutely nonsense. We looked at this in 2013 and we wrote the definitive dissertation on the matter, 5,500 words, which you can find on our legacy site. However, today we put up a shortened version of that on our new site, and it's simply called the British National Anthem, and you'll find it in the comments. And in this we point out that the three verses of the song that was to become the national anthem back in 1745, sung on this day, the three verses are exactly the same as the three verses which exist today. Okay? There's no mysterious verse about Marshal Wade hunting the Jacobites. It's certainly not part of any official national anthem. In fact, this book, God Save the Queen, The History and Romance of the World's First National Anthem, lists scores of alternative verses that were penned by people from 1745 onwards, but which have never ever been part of the national anthem. And I was just looking at this book again today in preparation for this program, and you know, here's a stanza that somebody's written to be sung to the same tune. Kinsfolk in love and birth, from utmost ends of earth, God save us all. Bid strife and hatred cease, bid joy and hope increase. Spread universal peace, God save us all. That was written at the start of the 20th century. That's just one. I mean, there's literally loads of them on every page. Here's one to Queen Victoria. Sorrow and joy her lot, yet these she ne'er forgot. Wife, mother, queen, purity, love and grace have met in sweet embrace, blessing the human race, our Empress Queen. That's to be sung to the same when somebody tried to assassinate Victoria, somebody penned a verse to be sung to the anthem. Saved from each traitor's arm, thou Lord, her shield from harm, ever hast been. Angels around her way watch, while by night and day millions with fervour pray, God save the Queen. Just tons of verses. But you know what is very interesting? He does not even mention anything about a rebellious Scots verse. This bloke has literally, 1954, Oxford University Press, he's literally scoured the archives for every verse that he could find back in those days, and he hasn't even found or mentioned or considered newsworthy in whatever way to even mention any verse about Marshal Wade and rebellious Scots. So the whole rebellious Scots nonsense is simply just an urban myth that's promoted by people who don't support the monarchy anyway, as a convenient excuse for their own republicanism. And when we were searching this, we found a digitized version of the magazine in 1745 in which the song was first published, and we've got that, and we'll just put that up on the screen. And in our article today, we actually link to this digitized version of this magazine, and there's the 3 verses. That was published on page 552 of the Gentleman's Magazine in October 1745, which would be just a few days, maybe a couple of weeks after it was first sung. And there you go, and these words are the same as the national anthem. Now, that wasn't even a national anthem, that was just a song back then, and it was sung in various music halls and in various places. And it only became a national anthem after, 50, 60 years, 70 years maybe later, it actually had become the national anthem for all of the United Kingdom. And those 3 verses are the same 3 verses which exist today. There is no mysterious 4th or 5th or 6th verse, and anybody who tells you that there is just talking absolute nonsense and doesn't actually know their history. And if people have ever sung any kind of 6th verse or 5th verse or 4th verse, then they've been misled into so doing, because it's not part of the national anthem. And really only the first verse and sometimes the second verse is sung. For example, at the Queen's funeral, they sang the first the third verse, the first and third verses. And those are the 2 verses which have been included in the Church of Scotland hymnary, every issue of the Church of Scotland hymnary since it was first published in 1898. Okay, so that's busting that particular Indy myth, which is to say that there is no anti-Scottish verse in the national anthem. And we can prove that, and we've actually put this article, we put it out today on our website. Good stuff. So Double O Mo says splendid. Marion says, I've missed a few of the Busting Indy Myths. Pleased to hear you are publishing them all. I want that mag. You'll certainly get it. There's no question about that, Marion. Charles O'Donnell says, many, many thanks. Thank you, sir. Marcus says, speaking of Jacobites, next time AUOB protest with kilts, blue bonnets with a white rose, remind them that the majority of Tories were Jacobite sympathisers. And if they say they're anti-monarchy, remind them that Jacobites were monarchists. Well, it's a good point, isn't it? Next year is the 420th anniversary of the Union of the Crowns. It's also going to be when Charles III is crowned. And we're going to have at least one Union Heart magazine dedicated to the Union of the Crowns. We might even have a Union Heart magazine dedicated to the coronation itself. But something that we're definitely going to be bringing out is that in all of Scotland's history, it's been a monarchy. And this actually differs from England because, of course, England had the period of Oliver Cromwell when he cut off Charles I's head. But almost immediately, within 2 or 3 days, the Scottish Parliament of the time declared Charles II to be king of all of Great Britain. So Scotland's always been a monarchy. Even you could argue for a longer time than England. So Scots who are Republicans don't properly understand Scottish history. And indeed, as we pointed out, just outside St Giles Cathedral, there is an equestrian statue to Charles II. So it was perhaps fated that inside St Giles was Charles III standing beside his mother during the lying in state. Double O Mo says, confound their politics, frustrate their knavish tricks. Brosome British bantering at its best. Yeah, frustrate their knavish tricks. That's a good phrase. Need to use that more often. That's what we're trying to do, frustrate their knavish tricks. Good. We're just talking about the Queen, actually. We do a lot of reading here in the office, and we discovered just recently an editorial that was published in the Mail on Sunday on the 18th of September. That was just a day before the funeral, and we've got that up, and I just want to highlight it because it's an extremely good piece of writing, and I don't know who wrote that, but it is really, really good, and you'll find it. We've posted it as part of an article that we've written more about in a minute called The British Monarchy Lives On, and you'll Sorry about that. Let me just read out a couple of paragraphs. Her virtues at first sound quiet, even meek, silence when speech is not necessary, restraint at all times, a temper kept when it could have been lost, a life lived modestly rather than extravagantly, a constant recognition that goodness and courage are to be found among all classes. But we must hope for these virtues, and those of us who pray should pray for it in our new king, who will tomorrow perhaps find himself more alone than ever before in his life. And it says there in the second last paragraph, however, we should also nurture and encourage these virtues in ourselves, in all we do and think and say. For Elizabeth II taught us in her long decades on the throne the enormous strength that lies in many things our noisy, urgent, fevered age has tended to forget or scorn: patience, thrift, modesty, civility, gentle humour, and plain good manners. In the final paragraph, as we contemplate and mourn the enormous gap that our late Queen has left in our national life, we can now see that these things added together are as mighty as an army with banners, and our best memorial to her will be to adopt the virtues she maintained when it would have been so easy to lay them aside. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Very good. Very good. Very good stuff. And you know, we also discovered this poster here on the back. It says, "When life seems hard, the courageous do not lie down and accept defeat. Instead, they are all the more determined to struggle for a better future." And that was Queen Elizabeth when she was giving her 2008 Christmas broadcast. Okay. Now, yes, the article that we wrote, "The British Monarchy Lives On," you'll find that in the comments. That's the third article that we've written this week. So we're on a roll for writing articles, by the way. We really are. And we've got quite a lot more to write, as well as preparing for our next issue of Union Heart, which will be the Busting Indy Myths issue. So a lot going on. You can support us by buying a wee book for the Union, which you can find in our shop. We'll put the address up there. And we also have this book, "Scotland Now, A Warning to the World" by Tom Gallagher. We've got several copies of these as well, which we're happy to send you if you purchase them from us. And we've also got this badge. Of course, we've got a new load of these have come in because we sold out them all. There you go, there's the shop. And we've also still got a very small number of these, which are what we call our flag badges. Can we get that in focus? There you go. As well as, of course, our best-selling bespoke Union Jack flag, 3x2, which has got an open end to put a pole into, and a tie as well. So you find all of those goodies at our shop, and it's really what helps us to keep going. No question about that. It really does help us to keep going. And we've also got our Union Supporters Programme, where we have people who are giving us a modest monthly donation from £3 upwards. And anybody giving upwards of £5 gets the badge free. And anybody giving a donation of £10 on upwards a month gets the badge and the book free. And so on. And you can check that out at our Union Supporters page on the website, which is there, aforceforgood.uk/union-supporters. Frankie says every school in our United Kingdom should fly the Union flag. That would be good. I certainly approve of that. And we've also got to maintain the Union badge as well, which is also at our shop, which has... just thinking, do I have one to hand? I don't actually have one to hand. Need to sort that one out. But that's selling extremely well also, Stuart. they sold out, and we had to get a new batch in, which have come in this week, and they're already shifting very well. And Alan says everyone needs a flag. You absolutely do, because you never know when you're going to need it, and it's better to have one and not need it than need it and not have it. TC enjoys our first class British history. Thank you, sir. Now, we had a competition, and we have a winner. We have a winner, and it was for our fridge magnet of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and also for our Union Jack trolley token. And it is Marcus Chappell. We asked the question. On this day, 28th September 1928, who discovered penicillin? And the answer, of course, was Alexander Fleming. So, Marcus, thank you very much. Could you use that same email and just pop your address in there, so we'll send that to you tomorrow morning, please. Great stuff. Stuart says, well done, Marcus. Good. And Amy says, well said, Frankie. I totally agree with everything you say. Catherine says, congratulations, Marcus. Folks, please remember that A Force for Good is going to be out doing activism this weekend. If you'd like to join us, please do contact us. Send us an email to contact@aforceforgood.uk, or send us a Facebook direct message or a message on Instagram. We'll see it and we'll get back to you. And if you've got a real profile, then we'll be able to get back to you and give you the information of where we are. Steve says, well done, Marcus. Also, folks, we're looking for somebody in Cardiff this weekend who can video the AUOB Welsh March that's going through the city centre, to video it on their mobile phone and get the video to us via Dropbox, or simply by uploading it to their own Facebook page, and in such a way that we will be able to make an accurate count of them. And that's this Saturday. So if you can help in Wales, in Cardiff, please contact us again with that information, and we'll fill you in with all the information that you need to know. Marcus says, didn't expect to win, if I'm being honest with you. Thank you for everyone for congratulating me. Good. Oh, I'm glad that you won. Folks, it's the top of the hour. We will be back next Wednesday with our 1 hour program. Thank you very much to everybody who watched. Please do join us next week. Please also like and share and subscribe to us. And that's just remains for me to say. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week. Until then, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.